Welcome, everyone. It is now 6:30 and we're at our Sunnyside City Council workshop for Monday, December 6th, 2021. This meeting is being live streamed using Zoom. Please allow one person to speak at a time. I will call on every member to make sure you've had an opportunity to ask any questions. I will now ask our Deputy City Clerk Rangel to start the roll call, please.
Mayor Guerrero,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Broersma,
Here.
Councillor Farmer,
Here.
Councillor Beeler,
Here.
Councillor Restucci,
Here.
Councillor Hicks,
Here.
Councillor Hart,
Here.
Interim City Manager Alba,
Here.
Interim Finance and Admin Services Director Horner,
Excused.
Fire Chief Anderson,
Excused.
Police Chief Escalera,
Excused.
Public Works Director Fisher,
I'm here.
and Deputy City Clerk Rangel, I'm here.
Thank you very much. So move on to our active agenda, which our first item is going to be a Sixth Street Improvement Project. Madam City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Guerrero. Tonight, we will have a presentation on this, but first I will let Public Works Director Fisher talk to you a little bit about it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So yeah, so this is a project we've been waiting for quite a while. 2013 is when we got the design grant to do this project, and we're just now to the point where we're ready to possibly go to construction next year, possibly in 23. So I'm really not going to say much more than that. Terry put together a very comprehensive little slide deck to go over with you guys. So with no further ado, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Mr. Terry Halapetri, and he's with HLA, and he is the project engineer. Go ahead, Terry.
Thank you very much. I'm here this evening with Charsky Kinlock, an engineer in our office. He's helping me on the design of the project. If I can get to the slides here. To here?
Yeah. Share screen. And then left, middle left, that one.
Okay.
Hit share. The blue right there. Yeah. And then here. And then.
Okay. Can everyone see the slides here?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, good evening. I've been working on this project about 8 years. It's been a long time. I'm happy to be actually talking about having it to be constructed. What it is, it's a continuation of the downtown revitalization that we built back in 2014. That project included 6th Street between Franklin Avenue and Decatur Avenue, and as well as Edison Avenue between 5th Street and 7th Street. It's the blue here on the screen that was constructed earlier on about 8 years ago. And the red is what we're proposing as the 2022 project. Back in 2019, the PIB paid for a new traffic light that we built at Yakima Valley Highway. That was originally part of the overall red project. And here is a picture here of an overview. It shows that the project limits of the new project are Decatur Avenue to North Avenue. It includes a full road rebuild as well as new sidewalks. It's basically it rebuilds everything in the city's right of way. And as you can see in the overview, we will have parallel parking on the west half of the roadway and diagonal parking on the east half. It'll match what we did on the 2014 revitalization project. However, this project has a couple of differences from the downtown project, namely the bulb outs at the intersections. It's where the sidewalk rounds out into the roadway. They will be smaller than what we had on at the intersection of 6th and Edison. It'll make the turning a little easier for the larger vehicles and the trucks. One of the other changes on this part of the project is we had heard that you guys had issues with trash being thrown in the raised islands and the raised fencing that went around the planters. So we've eliminated the raised planters, but kept all of the street trees. One of the other changes is on the last block between Yakima Valley Highway and North Avenue. It isn't really part of the downtown corridor. So in order to save about $250,000, we are keeping these sidewalks and just repaving repaving and restriping that one block. Go to the next slide here, and it shows the estimated project costs and how the projects are being paid. The just the street costs are about $3.5 million. And we also, as part of this project, we are also replacing the existing water and a small portion of old damaged sewer line. The water costs are approximately $500,000, while the cost of the new sewer is about $113,000. A total project cost of about $4.1 million. Now, here's the good news. On the larger part of the project, the $3.5 million street work, the city is only paying about $143,000 of that cost, which is about 4.5% of the overall project cost. It's a really small amount. It's great. And last week, or about a week and a half ago, the city found out that they had received a grant from the Transportation Improvement Board that pays that pays about $327,000. If they hadn't come through with that grant, that $327,000 would have ended up being a city cost. It's a really awesome deal. So anyway, that's where the cost break down, and I'm going to turn it over to Charsky to talk about the schedule and a couple other items.
All right, hello, everyone. Shown in front of you on the next slide is the tentative project schedule for remaining design, advertisement, and construction. Starting us off, following today's study session, the open house public information meeting is next Tuesday, December 14th at 6 p.m. More information on this meeting is coming soon. Also on the 14th, the 90% plans and specs will be ready for city and internal review by HLA so that they can be completed by the end of the year. Next, obligating funding for construction is anticipated to be done a month later by January 31st of 22, but could take up to 6 weeks. Following the funding obligation, advertisement for bids is targeted for the 1st of February, with bids being opened a little more than 3 weeks later on the 23rd. The official bid opening will be at 11 a.m. Following opening, the next opportunity for awarding the contract will be on March 14th. Construction would then begin less than a month later on Monday, April 4th. After 160 working days, construction would then be completed by November 11th of next year. What is shown, however, is a tentative schedule because the project is not currently scheduled to construct until 2023 in accordance with the Yakima Valley Conference of Governments priority list. However, we anticipate there to be an opening on the priority list that this project will be able to slip into, and we will know in January. Regarding the construction sequence, we plan to build the road in 2 phases, as shown on the slide. Construction will start on the west half, with 2-way traffic and parking remaining open on the east half, as well as businesses. This allows us to build the majority of the water main on phase 1. Once the west half is fully constructed, phase 2 will begin construction on the east half and contain the rest of the water main and the grind and overlay portion north of Yakima Valley Highway. Traffic and parking will be flip-flopped to the newly constructed west half, and the final lift for all asphalt for both sides will be constructed at the end of the project. As previously stated, the open house public information meeting for the project will take place from 6 to 7 p.m. on Tuesday, December 14th. The meeting will be at the City of Sunnyside Fire Station Training Room and expected guests are residents, business owners, and other community members. And I encourage you all to come to the meeting as well. The meeting will be in a forum format in order to answer any questions and discuss project scope or schedule. The flyer sent out to the community a couple of weeks ago is displayed on the right. Alrighty, everyone, thank you so much for your time. And that is the conclusion of our presented information for this 6th Street Improvements Project. We would now like to open the floor to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation, and we'll go down our list for council members to ask questions or comments on this item, and we'll start with our Deputy Mayor Burisma.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your presentation and the work that you've done on this. This is something that we've been anticipating for some time, looking forward to finishing. It's been nice to be able to tell people, hey, we have a project coming up. Eventually, we're going to resurface that north end of 6th Street. They're wondering why lines haven't been painted or things haven't been improved any more than they have. And so to be able to tell them that, hey, we've got this tentatively scheduled, hopefully this can happen next summer, is great. I did notice that on the north side of the project between Yakima Valley Highway and North Avenue, it appears on this map anyway, that all of the parking on both sides of the street are going to be parallel parking. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Is that because the street right away is so much narrower there, or is there?
Yeah, I believe you only have 60 feet of right of way there, whereas on the rest of the project, you have between 90 and 100 feet of right of way.
Okay. And then my second question is, it looks like you're rebuilding the intersection with 6th Street and North Avenue as well. If that's going to be finishing in the fall, is there a plan to deal with the incredible number of school buses that drive down that street during the school year?
Good question. Usually the grind and overlays happen very quickly. They would grind one day and then clean it up. They following a day and pave it within a week. It's a very small area. The paving will happen in about 2 hours. It would be pretty quick.
Okay.
So it won't be a big issue.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have right now.
You bet.
Councilor Restucci?
No questions or comments at this time, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councilor Beeler?
I just got one question on the northwest side of Yakima Valley Highway where the business Napa parts or auto parts are sold. How do you work out that when you drive right off the street and park in front of their building? And if you put a sidewalk there, how does that work for Napa?
We've looked at this over and over, and what we talked about here about 2 weeks ago with Shane and Elizabeth is having parallel parking in front of the building and adding a few extra parking areas on Warehouse Street, and that they would not end up losing any parking, and they would not be backing out over the existing sidewalk.
Well, thank you. I hope this development work looks as good as the last one you did in 2014, because
Thank you.
that really freshened up the city. We can't wait to get the rest of this done. So thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilor Hicks?
No questions, comments at this time.
Councilor Farmer?
Question and a comment. The question is, going back to Councilman Beeler's question, we're going to affect a lot of businesses along this reconstruction. has there been any contact with the businesses to get their input on how it's going to affect them and concerns that they may have?
Yeah, we're gonna have an open house next week to talk about it. There's not a whole lot that can happen other than keeping everyone open, keeping all their driveways open. Giving them half of the roadway that they can still park on. I'm hoping we have a good turnout next week at our open house.
Madam City Manager, go right ahead.
So my plan is on Monday and Tuesday to walk to each business that's open along that street and hand them an invitation flyer to the meeting on Tuesday night. And at that time, while I'm making contact, if they have concerns or questions, they can ask me, but I'm going to encourage them to come. And I will be going in person to do that on Monday and Tuesday. The other thing that we will be putting at the beginning and the ending of the construction is a very, very large sign that says businesses are open during construction, please come in. So I want to make sure that councilors know that this is a priority for us to make sure the businesses get to hear and know about this meeting in person, and that we also are going to do as much as we can to promote people to get in there and still visit their businesses.
Councilor Farmer, additional questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a comment. In the presentation, there was a comment made that really this is only costing us street fund money. Well, I would just beg the difference, a little bit of difference there. Water and sewer funds are tax money that the citizens of Sunnyside have paid, and it's costing us that also. It's not free money.
No, sir, I agree.
Okay.
Councilor Hart?
Well, comments I have is I'm excited to see this project get ready. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
go right ahead,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay. Sorry. I just wanted to say that I'm excited to see the project move ahead. I'm glad to hear that we will be making personal contact with each of the business owners as we go along there and keeping awareness out there that those businesses are open. This is really going to improve the whole look of that downtown corridor, and I'm excited to see it done. And I'm really pleased with the amount of money that we're able to receive to help put this project together, and good work. And I hope that we have lots of people at that community open house.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to also say that I'm excited for this. Also a little concerned because I know the last time we had several complaints about businesses stating that most individuals didn't know that businesses were open while construction happened. And I'm glad our city manager being proactive with the big sign. I think that was helpful last time. Obviously, the business that I run in town will be affected with traffic, and we have days that are really busy. So we will just roll the punches. We will definitely look forward to this being completed. And I'm excited to see there's a combination of parallel parking and diagonal parking, because I know that's one of the things I hear quite often from another street down between Safeway and Centennial Square, that they wish they had more diagonal parking versus parallel parking. But I am excited to see a combination of both and looking forward to the project being completed. And I know it's not going to be cheap, but I'm sure once we get this completed, it's going to just create a nice flow from our 6th Street, Yakima Valley Highway into 6th Street downtown. And the businesses will definitely benefit from that additional traffic going through our downtown core. So looking forward to this project being completed and excited to see it moving forward. Council members, any additional questions or comments on this agenda item? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for that presentation. And we will look forward to attending the meeting on the 14th, and we'll go on to our next agenda item.
Welcome, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next agenda item is city safety plan. Madam City Manager.
Again, I will turn this over to Public Works Director Shane Fisher.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So yeah, this is the city safety plan that we've been working on with HLA for a couple months now. Deb Lacombe is here on the call tonight, and she will go through kind of the sequence of events and kind of how this whole thing kind of lays out. I'm not going to speak to any of the real technical stuff either. I'm certain the city manager wouldn't want to either. We did have a meeting with them. We reviewed collision data. Did a lot of preliminary stuff, and Deb's here tonight to kind of talk about where we're at and what our next steps are. So with that, go ahead, Deb.
Good evening, I'm Deb Lacombe, and I work with HLA right now. We're working on Sunnyside City Safety Plan. We're in a pretty good position right now to share with the City Council what we've done. I wanted to kind of go over the different meetings that we've had. We had a kickoff meeting back in March, at the very end of March, with just the city safety, the city staff. And then Shane pulled together a really comprehensive workshop, which included fire, police, city council, city staff. I forget all who else was there, maybe health industry. We talked about how to prioritize crash locations and how to prioritize different countermeasures that the city might be willing to go after funding for. WSDOT puts on, for cities, they put on a call for projects every other year. The years that they don't have the call for projects for cities, they're doing a call for projects for the county. So it's kind of an alternating year thing. Those call for projects are asking for applications for locations which have had serious or fatal crashes. So it's very specific. I know that this city has at least 5 or 6 other safety projects that are already on the tip, but those may or may not coincide with where serious and fatal crashes have occurred. So one of the first things that we did was look at the crash data. And if I can share my screen, I think I'll pull this up. We were able to filter through all of Sunnyside's crash data for 5 years and kind of pick out the serious and fatal crash locations. We looked at all of the information that WSDOT provides us, which are things like the types of vehicles, lighting condition, whether or not somebody was going straight or making a turn. If somebody got hit from behind, they were stopped at a traffic signal. If alcohol or drugs were involved in the crash, and if there were any other contributing circumstances. The last little piece is the XY coordinates. And so it made sense that once we boiled it down to the city crash locations, oops, wrong one, sorry. We then, I think I have to unshare and then share again. We were able to map each one of these locations. We did it by the severity of the crash. We mapped it by whether or not a pedestrian was involved in it. We looked for the types of crashes that occurred, whether they were head-on or a T-bone type of situation, which we call entering at an angle, whether or not the vehicle left the roadway. We did have a couple of those. They were on I-82. And later we'll talk about why we removed the I-82, the two I-82 crashes from going further with evaluation. The last thing we did as a group was look at where the crash locations were and try to group them into corridors so that we could look at specific corridors and maybe do corridor-wide improvements. So we talked about the crashes, we talked about the types. The next thing that we did, there were 14 serious injuries and 2 fatal. The next thing that we did was looked at how are we going to rank crash locations. We decided crash severity was one of the leading types of priorities that we could look at. We could kind of decide between fatal and serious injury, because those are the only 2 severities that get funding from WSDOT. We decided that serious injuries were kind of the base. We would add extra points if it was fatal, and we would add even more points if it was pedestrian involved. We looked at crashes at intersections. When we reviewed the target 0 information, intersections rank higher with WSDOT. So we wanted to make sure that we gave projects that would align with WSDOT funding emphasis and give them more points at intersections and being intersection related. There were 4 different types of crashes. So we looked at those and decided anytime you leave your lane, that's the worst case scenario. We gave them the most points. The frequency of the crash type. So if this was a one and done kind of crash, it did not receive as many points as if it was a repeating kind of scenario. And if it repeated at multiple locations. The last thing that we gave points for was if it was in a problematic corridor. And that way we could look at where best to do larger improvements that can not only take care and mitigate the current crash that's on record, but prevent future ones from happening as well. When we were done looking at the crash locations, we went into the contributing circumstances for those crashes. And there are lists of improvements or mitigations that you can do that help with particular types of crashes. So we looked at those and decided which ones the city would be most supportive of. There were some that didn't even make this list. For example, a little bit further down, disregard to stop sign, there in some lists, they may have wanted to include things like enforcement cameras. And we understood that Sunnyside would probably never want to go there. So it didn't even make the list. Some of these are education, enforcement, leadership, policy kind of contributing circumstances or countermeasures. Although WSDOT will not pay for that type of a project, Washington Transportation Safety Commission will, TIB will. There's a number of other ones. Our, what is it? I was going to say ARPA, but that's because I'm looking up at the sign. RCO will. There are more types of funding than just this WSDOT funding. So we didn't want to kind of just do this one use purpose for our city safety plan. So we included all of the different countermeasures that the city may go after funding for later. When we were done with that, I'm going to increase the size on this so everybody can see. When we were done with that, I took all of the recommendations that that workshop did and gave me, and I went ahead and scored each one of these crash locations so that we could end up with 1, 2, 3, top 5, top 10. I also included those projects that are already on your tip because they're already vetted through the community. So I wanted to make sure that WSDOT knew Sunnyside already had quite a few vetted projects that were safety related, even if no fatal or serious crash had occurred there over the last 5 years. The last little piece of this is data needs. And the data needs that are identified for the city of Sunnyside are those that will help us refine the city safety plan later. So pedestrian traffic studies, and maybe during multiple seasons, performing a speed study on problematic corridors because speeding seemed to be an issue, and then performing safety element inventories. So doing an inventory of your lighting, the lighting as it is right now, and inventory of your sidewalks as they are right now. WSDOT also pays for the data studies. So we wanted to make sure we got a couple of those in. We came up with the top 5 priority crash locations, and you'll see number 2 is missing from the list. Number 2 is one of those I-82 crashes. And really, truly, the city is probably not going to be the lead on a WSDOT facility, with the exception of 241. And the reason for that is, as it comes through the jurisdiction, it does become the jurisdictions, they become the lead for the improvements that are done on the freeways.
Oh, my eyes are tired. Sorry.
Sunnyside City Safety Plan illustrative projects. So this kind of talks about those countermeasures. It talks about the top 5 priorities. It talks about, will those need to be included in the tip? Are they already included in the tip? Is it a low, mid, or high cost, or a short, mid, or long-term project? So that the city can decide whether or not they want to support those top 5 that are just simply ranked by points. Once we talk to Shane and we get concurrence that the council supports all of the information that we were working with and the conclusions that we came with, we'll put together projects. All the projects go on one application that the city will be applying for by March 4th. We can group some of these. So for example, if you look at this and it talks about street and pedestrian scale lighting is in multiple of these locations, that can become a project, just the lighting project. It could be, the city could apply for 1 project or 7 projects or 20 projects in the same application. We are going to kind of narrow it down to 3 or 4 different ones and group them so that they make sense. What makes sense to WSDOT is a cost that sits somewhere between $50,000 and $150,000 per project, but there's no limit on the number of projects. So if we had 10 $150,000 projects, that would be $1,500,000. There is a 10% match. And so we'll be talking with Shane about what that means for the city. The same type of estimate that Terry showed us on his project will be done for each one of these projects that we kind of group into this application. And that'll be shared with the city, and the city will approve the application before we submit on March 4th.
That's a good idea.
So thanks to that workshop group. It's very complex going through all of this, especially when nobody believes that they're a specialist on safety, but everybody does have an opinion and they can kind of formulate as a group what they believe the community will support and believe in. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you for that presentation, and we'll go down a list of council members for questions or comments, and we'll start with Councilor Restucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to thank Terry for his work on this, and Deb, I want to thank you for your work on this as well. It's good to see you again.
Yeah.
So last I heard you were in Walla Walla, so I'm glad to hear you've moved on to something else. That's good. Does this cover all of the safety plans? So that would include like cameras and everything else throughout the city, or is this just for the transportation infrastructure piece?
So this is just the transportation infrastructure piece for this time. And it's being directed towards the WASDOT funding. But those other data needs, once we put those into this plan, we can expand the plan. So for now, it is just about streets. It's just about pedestrians. It's about the crashes that happen between cars and pedestrians, cars and trucks, that sort of thing. And it's only at serious and fatal crash locations.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm good, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Beeler.
No questions or comments other than this is a very well done. I actually read this over the weekend and your reports are really easy to read and understand. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you.
Councilor Hicks.
Everything I had's already been answered, so no questions.
Councilor Farmer.
Enjoyed the presentation, very insightful. I have no questions or comments at this time.
Councilor Hart.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was just looking at some of the when you had that other, I'm sure what page it was on, but you were talking about the kinds of projects that could happen at various intersections, considering like roundabouts in a number of places in the, in I think it was Yakima Valley on a couple of them, Sunnyside Mapton Highway, a couple places where maybe we need to include those on our tips, but also some of those roundabout situations, which I really hate roundabouts, but they are a really good way to slow traffic down. And so I'm eager to see how that can work as part of our safety plan. So I know that all of this costs quite a bit of money, but we'll go out and find it and make it happen. So thank you for your work on this. This is really comprehensive and very interesting.
Oh, you're welcome. I'll pass that on to the team that worked on it.
Very good.
Deputy Mayor Bursma.
Thank you. I join my colleagues in complimenting you on the work that you did on this. I do have a question as I skimmed over this. So the funding would, I mean, if you say they're looking at providing 150,000 per project, I'm going to guess that something like a roundabout will cost significantly more. I can't remember the numbers I've heard for the one they did on Highway 97 here recently. But so we're going to have to look for funding from other sources. Is there grant money and that sort of stuff available, or do you know about that sort of thing?
Yes, so the roundabout actually is something that they would look at in this city safety plan. So that 150,000, that 50,000 to 150,000, that kind of rule of thumb is for things like lighting. They wouldn't want you to put a project together that was lighting for the entire city. They would want you to break it up into smaller pieces. That's why those corridors are so important, but they will do roundabouts and have done roundabouts. TIB also does roundabouts. The Bike and Ped, both of those programs, which are WASDOT programs, do roundabouts. The Washington Traffic Safety Commission would help with some parts of the roundabout. Depending on if you're near a railroad, they might even go after UTC for funding. So there's quite a few.
Okay, that's helpful. And thank you for that. I know, like Councillor Hart, a lot of people don't prefer roundabouts. I've seen how they have saved a lot of time in Union Gap, for example, made some things somewhat easier. There's a couple of them that are still a little tricky, but I've also seen the traffic at certain times of day, people coming down Swan Road, down Maple Grove, trying to get on Yakima Valley Highway. And I think North First Street is very much the same. You can get some backups there and the light doesn't always change at a good time. So that's probably the direction we're going to end up going. It certainly seems to be the trend in road construction. Are these the kinds of things that we're going to need to put a timeline on?
Yeah, the short, the mid, and the long term, this on this same chart that we were looking at, those are elements. If you looked at, like, for example, number 4, Yakima Valley Highway and North First Street intersection, there's all 3 colors there. And that's because different parts of these countermeasures that are inside that table can be done at different times.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a Main Street approach. You either do small parts at a time and chunk it up into phases, or you do all of one type of improvement. And we make sure that we get it bottom up. You know, you, like Terry did in his project, where if you're going to put a cap on it, call a road, you better have done the improvements underneath it first.
All right, thank you very much. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And again, thank you for the presentation. I can't say I'm too surprised to see the top 3 being Yakima Valley Highway, but I do see that it's definitely needed some improvements in that area, and I'm happy to see that they are on the top 5 of the ranking there. So glad to see that. And thanks for the presentation again. Council members, any last questions or comments for Ms. Lacombe? Okay, hearing none, thank you very much. And we'll go on to our next agenda item, which is going to be preliminary plats code update. Madam City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Guerrero. I would like to add one comment to the last item. Since March, the TBD has had $627,406.15 submitted to the city and is in our possession at this very moment. That is 9 months of revenue. In January, we received nothing, and in February, we received $443.92. So I'm not counting those 2 months. So we have a fund that's being built up with that transportation benefit district, and we could start using that for these matches for the different grants. So that is one good news, and that will keep growing. And really, honestly, our sales tax revenue has been fabulous. So as long as we keep people spending in our city or delivering their packages to our city, we could expect that to keep going. So I just wanted to bring that up. And our next item, I will have Planning and Community Development Director Shuttleworth present.
Okay, thank you, Madam City Manager. What I have is just some basic changes to our preliminary plat regulations. And the reason being is some of them are based on comments I've received since I started working in the city, and other them are based on items that need to be changed. Next slide there, please. Oh. Okay. And so just basically the current code was adopted in 1980. As you can see by the presentation there, we require 30 copies of the plat. Given internet and everything else that we have, we don't need that many anymore. It really requires very little on the front of the preliminary plat. And we run into, when we have hearings and stuff, there's quite a few questions about what's the average lot size? What's the minimum lot size? What's some other information? It'd be nice to have them on the front of those. And then Title 16 is not consistent with Title 19. Title 19 is the Regulatory Reform and Growth Management Act that requires closed record hearings and other things. So we're trying to put those together, and that's that next item, the criteria for setting public hearings. And then on the next one, only requires agreements for improvements not completed. The way that's worded is kind of confusing. It almost sounds like you put forth an agreement when you're actually doing the construction. Normally, you see people who want to get their final plat early, they put forth an agreement and a bond to bond for the improvements. So we want to change that. And then the material of the final plat, right now, it requires a Mylar. Those have kind of gone by the wayside. It's actually, and I understand, getting difficult to get Mylar material. And then the city council reviews and approves the final plat. A thing came about when a recent final plat came, it was all ready to go, but because of the hearing schedule or meeting schedule, it was almost a month before it actually got its approval. So there was a month sitting there that the applicant could be selling lots and doing other things. So we want to speed that process up. Next slide. So some of the changes we're looking, we only need about 15 copies of the preliminary plat and one 11x17 that we will scan, and we use that to email out to a lot of people. It seems to provide a quicker process and we get comments back. We do want a lot of additional information on the front of the preliminary plat, such as gross acreage, number of lots, minimum lot size, average lot size, average density, net loss, lot acreage, type of water services, how much road right of way is going to be developed, what type of sewage is going to be provided. Next slide. And then some of the other major changes, I wouldn't say major, but changes are proposed section to change to have the council have a closed record hearing. And this is consistent with the state law and Title 19, which basically says we really can only have one open record hearing, and usually that's by the planning commission. We would bond for the improvements not yet completed when the applicant wants to do their final plat earlier. And we're asking that the amount of the bond be 125% of the cost of the improvements, because we know costs go up as years go by. Normally a bond is good for 2 years. And then also there's a cost if we have to pull the bond, we have to go through some legal processes. So we need to make sure we cover our costs. And then the final plat doesn't necessarily have to be Mylar anymore. It can be actually paper. The county will record paper, which is a lot cheaper and a lot easier to do. And then on the final plat, this is a major change. Instead of going back to the city council, because of the time, we could just allow the city manager to sign it, basically that showing that all the improvements have been completed. Next slide. So that's basically the changes I'm proposing. They're not major changes, but I think they're enough to clear up some of the issues and then also speed up the process a little bit. So I take any questions the council's members have.
Thank you for the presentation, and we'll start with Councilor Beeler. Questions or comments?
I have no questions or comments. Thank you.
Councilor Hicks?
Yeah, it sounds like you're just trying to streamline a little bit. Sounds good to me. No questions.
Councilor Farmer?
No questions.
Councilor Hart?
So even though these different reviews will be signed by the city manager, they will be part of somehow the city council will know what's going on there with some of those plat reviews and so forth. There will continue to be a report on those, correct?
We can make sure there's a report on them, yes. So the city council would review the plat as part of the preliminary plat process and have to approve the preliminary plat. It's just once the preliminary plat is done and all the improvements are done, then the city manager would sign saying, yes, improvements are done according to what the council approved.
Okay, thank you. I'm really excited to see you streamline the plat reviews so that people can get to their projects a little bit faster. With the invention of the internet and emails and so forth, some of, like you said, the Mylar materials probably aren't as necessary as they might have been at one time. So it's looking through all of those things. Thanks for taking the work on to do that, to speed up the review. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Burisma?
Yeah, my concern was the same as Counselor Hart's, the fact that the council gets to at least look at the plats and talk about it and approve those overall. The fact that we get to do that, I think should be a part of that. But also just going on, this continues a process that's been going on for the last few years of updating and streamlining and cleaning up city codes and processes, making things easier, bringing things up to date. So I approve of that. I thank you for the work that you've done on that. It's absolutely necessary. And we can get these projects moving in a more orderly fashion. That's a great idea.
Absolutely.
Councilor Restucci?
I only have one quick question. I thought the statute said it has to be the HEO that signs the final plat, not the city manager. The HEO being the highest elected official in the city because of the requirements for the federal government, because the feds don't recognize council manager and mayor council forms of government.
I don't know, I could answer that portion of your question. Basically, the law was changed a while back that does allow for city managers to sign final plats.
Okay, then if as long as it was changed, then I'm good with it. Thank you.
And I do have a question. So is this similar to what other cities are doing, Mike, or is this something that we are just bringing down the volume of copies, for example? Or is this consistent with other cities that are obviously trying to streamline the process as well?
Yeah, I think like on the number of applications or number of drawings, cities vary. You know, if I got 30 copies, probably 15 or 20 of them will be thrown away because I wouldn't be used. So that's why, and I, quite frankly, when I do get a plat in, I copy it, scan it, and I send it out to reviewing agencies via the email. And then if they want additional paper copies, then I mail them to them.
Okay, so it sounds like we're reducing the amount, but not necessarily eliminating, because some agencies are still working with paper, it sounds like.
Correct. Some people still, such as our public work directors, like paper copies of it.
Okay. I guess since we're talking about plats, I did get a question from a media person last week sometime about how many projects we have going on. I'm not sure if our city manager is going to discuss that tonight or not, but we're trying to get ourselves like she is. All right, so that's the only question I have, and I'm glad that you are being proactive about these items that are cumbersome or are a bit more restrictive to builders to be able to build in Sunnyside. So I'm glad you're really streamlining some of these processes to make it easier for them and easier on staff, hopefully as well, and making it a lot easier and faster for individuals to get projects off the ground here in Sunnyside. So thank you for that.
Okay.
Council members, any last minute questions or comments for our agenda item C? Hearing none, we have our next item is upcoming council meetings. Madam City Manager.
Janet, if I could get the council agenda schedule on the screen, please.
I'm sharing it. Is it not showing up on your guys' end?
Oh, never mind. Sorry, I have my email on top of it.
Oh, it's
That would be
okay.
why. Sorry. So at the next council meeting, we have the Judge Michael's retirement. I would like permission from Mayor Guerrero to give him a city coin. So would you like to be able to present that to him, Mayor?
Absolutely, that'll be excellent. I know all these years of service, he definitely deserves that and then some, so for sure.
And we do have a plaque for him. I've invited him to the meeting. I'm not sure if he'll come. If he doesn't come, I would also ask that we could deliver the plaque and the coin in the afternoon if he would prefer to do Zoom. And then if he just doesn't prefer, at least he's got his plaque and his coin. If that's okay. Okay. And then our next section is an executive session for real estate. There's two matters that we need to discuss. 2022 budget adoption, the preliminary plats code update, which you just went through, 2021 budget amendment number 4, citywide energy audit Amoresco. And we're going to see if you guys will let me have this many items. If not, that item might be pulled. 6th Street improvement projects, the fuel tax agreement, and the 2022 classification and compensation schedule. And then the last one is the selection of the mayor for 2022. So with that, I would like to get some feedback on, wait, Janice, don't go, not yet. Go back. Sorry. On the two items. So the one item would be, obviously this is a very packed meeting. This is our last meeting of the year. There is two sections that would be probably a little longer. That would be the Amoresco. And then we would need to figure out how long we need for executive session.
Let's go ahead and pull that Amoresco and just move it to next year. It sounds like it's something that can wait.
Okay.
And I think, like you said, we have a pretty full meeting already. So if you could just move that one over to 2022, it should be good. As far as the executive session, you said two items. Usually we
Two
spend about
items.
15 to 20 minutes per item. Are they combined, or are they items that are going to be completely separate that we might be asking quite a few questions?
Two items that are separate, and one of them should be fairly quick. I have a feeling you won't have a lot of questions, and it's something we've talked about before.
Okay, in that case, let's just shoot for 20 minutes and then we'll extend from there if possible, if needed.
Okay. And it will be easier because we will be in person at this meeting. So that was another thing that I wanted to let everyone know. Mayor Guerrero has requested that we have an in-person meeting for our last meeting. And obviously, if you're still not comfortable in person, you are still allowed to come via Zoom. So that's the other part. And then with that, we have canceled the workshop in on January 3rd. So January 10th, we'll move that Amoresco. And I'm sure these empty slots will fill up quite fast. And then our next.
Council,
Yes.
is any objection to canceling the January 3rd workshop for the first workshop in 2022?
We actually did that at the last meeting.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I wasn't able to attend, so thank you for the clarification.
Okay. And then the other thing is we just moved everything from that meeting to February 7th. So with that, I will move on to the other item that I wanted to discuss, if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am, go right ahead.
So I am going to not look at this screen. And so Mayor Guerrero sent me an email because he was asked about housing projects in Sunnyside and wanted to get some solid numbers before basically answering the question. So there's actually a worksheet that Mike Shuttleworth put together, and is very comprehensive, tells you how many have been issued, what the parcel number is, if it's an application, if it's under review. We have at this point, let me get the count really quick. Single family residences. Sorry, I was using Excel to count and it's not giving me the right count. So it looks like we have about 20. I'll give you a rough number. And then we have an apartment unit that is being basically pending SEPA and traffic study of 24 units. So I will email this out to council so that you have it, so you can see the addresses and know exactly where there's construction and what the status of that is. So with that, I believe I don't have anything else.
Yeah, thank you for sending that. I've been asking, because of the shortage we have of housing, and since I've been asked quite a few times, it seems like over the past several weeks, and I just don't have exact numbers. I've been to a couple of ribbon cuttings and have an idea where they're at, but I didn't want to shortchange our city by saying that we only have a few items coming in the pipeline. And hopefully this document will give a little more of an insight as to what we have available or coming available here shortly. So thank you for putting that together for us.
Well, Mike did the work.
Councilor Hart, were you going to say something?
Yes, I'd just also like to know, as long as we're doing housing and apartment units, Is there a report that we might have as far as what new businesses for the past year? Is that something we can also ask about?
You have to be really careful with businesses because there's only a certain amount of information that you can give out. But
Mhm.
I can go on the public side for our business license
Yes,
stuff, and I'll find out how many new businesses in 2021.
yeah, that would be enough. Just the licensing would be good.
Okay,
Thank
I
you.
can do that.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything
Mr. Mayor,
else,
this is
Madam City?
Councilor Farmer.
You go right ahead, sir.
I want to go back to the next agenda on selection of mayor. I would rather that be put off till the first meeting of January. Our deputy mayor can chair the meeting. And one of the reasons why I would like to do that is we are going to have a new council member next year. I think that lady or that council member should be involved in the process of selecting the mayor.
Is there any objection to that? I support it. Again, I'm not gonna be here next year, so unless council decides otherwise, I would prefer it to be done. I wouldn't want to have a voice on mayor for next year since I won't be here. So I personally would want to move it to 2022. Council members, any objection to moving that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I object. And here's the issue. This is not precedent. This was done when Ed Perluchik lost his reelection and left office as well. We are in a state of emergency in this state. And unfortunately, the state law doesn't always look at the deputy mayor's powers and abilities or the mayor pro tem in the case of that. I don't think we should be in a situation where the office of mayor is vacant and you're going to leave office, sir, on December 31st at midnight. So even if the council wanted to come together in January and hold a vote for mayor again pursuant to Rule 3.5 of the Council Rules of Procedure, they could do that. So this doesn't prohibit council from voting again for mayor in January. All it does is ensure that the office of mayor is not vacant during those 15 days or so that you're out of office, sir.
From the 31st to the 10th?
10th or 12th, right?
10th.
12th?
The 10th.
January 10th. Okay, so 10 days.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Farmer again. And maybe Councilor Rasucci can answer this question. Can we appoint an interim mayor for the first 2 weeks of January on our next meeting?
The law is actually silent. I mean, and I would defer to an attorney, obviously, but from my understanding, Mr. Farmer, the selection of mayor and deputy mayor is a council purview. The council chooses who they want in their leadership roles. So I don't see any reason why we can't put a limit and say, we're appointing you for 2 weeks or whatever. I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that.
Or, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
if we have a deputy mayor in place right now, can that role would be to hold over to the 10th, to the next regular meeting?
If I can, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, Julia, it doesn't work that way because of certain laws that have gone into effect recently, specifically ones that outline that it needs to be the HEO or actually the mayor of the city. And it doesn't say deputy mayor or mayor pro tem or, assistant mayor, like in the case of Yakima. So I would be concerned that we might have an issue where we need a mayor and we don't have one. That's all my concern is here.
So can I have a follow-up question, Mr. Mayor?
Go right ahead, ma'am.
So if we were to appoint, say, our deputy mayor as interim mayor, would that cover that particular legality?
I believe so, because obviously council is making a decision to appoint someone to be acting mayor during a specific period of time. So to me, I mean, I'm not an attorney, but to me, it makes sense.
So may I throw a question in here at this point?
Go right ahead,
When we're
Deputy Mayor.
talking about the highest elected official, once your term is up, does not the deputy mayor become the highest elected official by default?
That's what my question is too.
It may, and if state law agrees with that, then we're okay. But if it says mayor, the actual word mayor, in our code, for instance, the word mayor is used 55 times in 50 chapters of our code.
Right.
So council, what is
Mr.
your desire
Councilman
this time? Do you want to move the agenda item to January 10th? Or do you want to keep it and potentially discuss further on our next meeting on the 13th, I believe it is?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Hicks.
Go ahead, Councilor Hicks.
Yeah, why don't we just appoint our deputy mayor as mayor until the January 10th meeting and we can vote from then?
So it sounds like we'll keep it on the agenda for the 13th, and then we'll make a decision at that time, but at least it will give us some time to think it over and maybe look up some state law and see what we decide to do on the 13th, and we don't have to make a decision tonight.
I'm agreeable to that.
I think that's a logical call.
I'm agreeable to that as well. And council, this is just from experience. I know as mayor pro tem, I took actions as mayor pro tem when the mayor was out of town, and there was a lot of discussion and there were multiple votes over it and everything else because the mayor felt that I overstepped his bounds and I didn't. I was acting on behalf of the council. So I just want to make sure that it's clear who's in charge. That's
Right.
all.
Thank you, Councilor Suchi. All right, so we'll keep it on the agenda and we'll have further discussion on our next meeting, and we'll decide what to do at that time.
Good deal.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilman Farmer again.
Go right ahead, sir.
We're coming back to the same thing.
No.
I think we need to allow our incoming council member to participate in this process. And there's no way that she can participate in this process till she is sworn in as a council member. And I think we're not giving her the respect that she deserves if we cut her out of something like this. All I would like to see on the agenda is just appoint an interim mayor until the 13th, or not at all. Just let the deputy mayor do it.
In that case, what we can do is we could change the agenda item to discussion of mayor or interim mayor for 2022, early 2022. It doesn't have to be, it's gonna be more of a discussion item, and council's gonna have to make the decision whether they appoint somebody or not. So it's not, we have to vote yea or nay on it. It's more of a, if council decides not to move forward, then we just don't have a motion on it. But Ms. Alba, can we just move it to discussion on mayor selection for 2022 or interim city? Well, however you want to award it for 2022 to have a mayor in place in order for us to meet state law.
Yeah, we can do that.
Would that satisfy Councilor Farmer?
So be it.
All right, so, all right, any further business? Okay, there be no further business to come before council, and without objection, I adjourn this meeting at 7:43 p.m. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye, everyone.
Okey-dokey.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
All right.